Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this episode number 142. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has liked, shared, has commented on the show, subscribes on any platform you can listen or view this show on. All your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. Also want to take this time to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment provides first-class weight rooms and has earned an exceptional reputation of providing the finest quality, design, and customer service. Being a direct manufacturer, the team at Samson brings full customization capabilities and not only branding, but in custom equipment needed to execute your next big project. From racks, barbells, and plates to dumbbells, benches, flooring, storage, and much more, Samson equipment is durable and made to order from premium grade materials, all built from scratch, start to finish. Samson equipment provides professional weight room solutions for all your strength and conditioning needs. See the Samson standard for yourself and learn more at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. Cerberus is an organization that truly puts the athlete first and actively works towards providing the best quality gear at an affordable price. Their ever-growing product range is used by the top athletes around the world at the highest level of competition, and every single Cerberus Strength product has been designed with performance in mind with the highest attention to detail. So if you're in the market for the highest quality strongman and strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code strength_game to receive an extra 10% off your next order. Also want to thank our sponsor, Sport Kilt. Sport Kilt offers a wide range of universal and clan tartans, as well as custom sport kilts and an excellent selection of accessories and apparel to complement the kilt wearer. Check out the full line of kilts and join the kilt life at sportkilt.com, and be sure to use promo code TSG to save on your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Tim Kontos. Tim is the Associate Athletic Director for Sports Performance and Student Athlete Wellness at Virginia Commonwealth University. Kontos is going into his 27th year at VCU, first arriving in 1998 as a part-time strength coach, became an assistant athletic director for the sports performance department, and was again promoted to associate AD before his new title as associate AD for sports performance and student athlete wellness. From August of 2018 to January of 2021, Kontos supervised the sports medicine, sports nutrition, sports psychology, and sports performance departments. This was in addition to being responsible for the design, implementation, and supervision of all strength and speed agility programs for the Rams Baseball and Volleyball teams. Currently, Kontos oversees the volleyball and the sports performance department. Kontos got his coaching start at his alma mater, Radford University, where he spent 2 years serving as a strength and conditioning coach for the ice hockey team prior to joining VCU. Kontos is a master strength and conditioning coach through the CSCCA, earning the highest honor in the profession in 2015. He's also the head coach and owner of Kontos Strength, which is an online platform that offers custom programming and coaching, including return from injury and competition prep programs. A firm believer in learning under the bar, Kontos was a competitive powerlifter from 1994 until retiring due to injury in 2023. Kontos' best lifting accomplishment is a competition best 600-pound squat in knee wraps at 198 pounds. In his off time, Kontos enjoys being outside with his wife and spending time with his kids, Alex, Zane, and Mariah. Like I said, I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Tim Kontos. What's going on, everybody? Today we've got big time coach. We've got Coach Tim Kontos on the show. How you doing today, Coach?
Fantastic. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. I know we got chatting a little bit beforehand. Uh, I'm glad I got to start the recording at some point because we could have just kept going forever.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, well, let's take it back for those because there's you got a prolific career, both powerlifting, both in your coaching career, being at VCU for such a long amount of time, um, just everything in general. But before we kind of get into where you're at now, how you kind of progressed in your career and then your athletic career,
Mhm.
competing, where did you really kind of get started and like kind of get that itch for training and then ultimately kind of getting into powerlifting later on in your career?
So I started lifting like as most guys do for sports, and that was intermittent at best, and that was probably around 14 to 16. Then 16, I got a little more serious about it. Got a driver's license, started training fairly regularly, and at that point, honestly, it was to try and get girls. So, um, but then when I got into it, very quickly within a year or so, I realized, okay, it's probably better if you have a goal, just like anything else. And so the only thing out at that time was muscle magazines. There was a Powerlifting USA in circulation, but it was subscription only. And so bodybuilding is like that's the only thing you can compete in as far as my knowledge at that point. So I started bodybuilding and then started talking to some of the gym members, and it was more of a wellness center than anything else. And the guy was like, "Yeah, a lot of people will try and put on size by powerlifting in the off season." And again, at that time, they just had magazines, so I flipped through, and at the back of it, there was how to bench press. It was a little, 4-page book or something like that, how to deadlift and how to squat. So I ordered all three of them, coming in the mail and absorbing anything I can. Then I start talking to people in the gym, learning about more about powerlifting, and found a competition. And ironically enough, the first competition I went to, um, for those of you who aren't aware, in powerlifting, it's the squat, bench, and deadlift, competing in that order. And you have to get a squat in to go to the bench press. And I didn't get a squat in. I went to the bottom of the squat and didn't stand up. And that happened two more times. And so I bombed out of my first meet. But it bit me. I on the way home, after I wiped away the tears, I started trying to find, went to the back of the Powerlifting USA and trying to find the next competition that was going to be in and around the state of Virginia. And so I was hooked. I loved it.
That's crazy. Yeah. Even I didn't even think about that too, because like it's a little bit before my time. Thinking of like powerlifting competitions were posted in magazines at that point, and you
Yeah.
had to like, unless you were getting word of mouth and you were already kind of in the circuit yourself, breaking into it, like you either had to stumble across it and then once you did stumble across it, like you really had to like stay on top of it in order to learn and like actually seek out that information. Unlike today where it's just you could shake it with a stick and
Right.
it's just
Yeah.
everywhere.
hmm Yeah, I was lucky enough to find a place called Mike's Olympic Gym, which has now gone under. But it was the atmosphere was powerlifting. It was powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting, and finding a gym like that these days is few and far between. But back then was even more difficult, and it was, again, like you're talking about word of mouth. You talk to someone, you have someone spot you on squats, and then they're like, "Oh, have you ever heard of this place?" And so that's that's where I got my start, and that's where I was introduced to Prilipin's table and the Soviet form of lifting because my coach he was ahead of his time at that time. So
What would you say? Because you kind of talked about it right there. Like those gyms are kind of few and far between. They're hard to find.
mhm,
Just I think there's such an abundance of like different types of gyms. You can go to places that are specific powerlifting now, or they're like general fitness or like
mhm.
camps, whatever it is. Like, what about that kind of atmosphere or that kind of gym environment, like, do you think is harder to find, or what about it like really made it more unique that kind of thrived in that like strength coach kind of culture?
It's you're back then. There's no internet, so there's not chats and there's not a lot of camaraderie unless you're in that environment. But then when you're in that environment, everybody's speaking the same languages. You're talking about your first attempts versus your third attempt, your gym lifts versus your competition lifts. So it's, that's the difference maker. And you go to get a spot and everybody in that gym because Mike had shown every single person you had to do a one-on-one session with him. And so everybody who did that, so then I go in the gym and I can ask them for a spot. I know they know what they're doing. Whereas a commercial gym, it's like it's any guess.
Yeah, I guess with that too, like I know we'll get into it a little bit more, but like going into now your 27th year at VCU, like coaching, like which is phenomenal. It's great. I don't know if there's many coaches at Division I level or any collegiate level that been in a place that long. So hats off to you. I
Yeah.
know we'll touch on that a little bit more, but I've got to kind of guess a little bit and assume that that kind of atmosphere that you learned in that gym, and then just kind of that approach that you took, like vetting, vetting like individuals coming in, you kind of took that yourself. Because I don't know if you remember, it was probably 10 years ago, like I applied for a graduate position or an assistant position for you. And
Uh,
I remember going through the process and like kind of like understanding like everybody is detailed, like it's video, you could see
mhm.
everybody, and it's a panel of everybody like within your staff and within like different components and spokes of the department. Like, and I could feel kind of everybody vetting me out and doing exactly what you're doing to see if that person is worthy to kind of do all that stuff you're talking about. Is that
Mhm.
kind of the approach, or like you kind of started spinning that off when you started kind of bringing people into the gym, interns, assistants on your staff?
Yeah, I mean, it's you want to be able to work alongside with people that are the common bond. And back then, 10, 15 years ago, you are working alongside people, assisting one another with your teams as opposed to having your own team, your own responsibilities. So it was that much more important that you're bringing in people, like-minded people with the same work ethic and want the same things. And yeah, so it's changed over the years, but it's I rarely go into looking for a position for something specific other than the sport specific experience because and that's not even that important to me, but it's for administrators and coaches. That's probably the key thing. But it's yeah, so just making sure that it's more of an art than it is, here's the boxes I want to check when I'm looking for someone. Is this person going to match with our personalities? Is it going to match with the sport coaches' personalities? Are they going to get along with the athletic trainers? All those things. And, there's going to be pretty consistent themes throughout. Someone's going to be humble, a good collaborator, and someone who's hungry. So,
Yeah, those
but
are
yeah.
good. Those are good intangibles to kind of have and good points to kind of look for when you're actually trying to bring someone on staff. You brought up an interesting point, like when you're talking about, unfortunately, like one of the things is I mean, it's maybe not unfortunate, but having sport specific skills or having experience in a sport if you're hiring kind of for a sport to fit that position. Because I think a lot of jobs in the collegiate space now, like the school and like the department, unless it adds a staff or removes a staff member, the sports don't really shuffle a whole lot. And so
Mhm.
whatever position is open and kind of vacated, even though they don't really say what the job is for, like who the sports are for, you're kind of looking to fulfill that spot based off either a hierarchy of that sport within the university or like just to kind of fill the need of the person that's just leaving. But you're in a position like being an associate AD where you can kind of talk to those sport coaches and talk to administrators that ultimately like are the ones that stamp the approval and sign those paychecks. Like, how do you kind of narrate and kind of change if you see the fit, like like a really good coach that maybe doesn't have any of that sport experience? Like, how do you measure some of those intangibles and relay that information to people that aren't really as knowledgeable about the weight room and like coaching in general when you know it's a good fit, but they see someone that just like baseball check, baseball check, they're going to be the baseball guy. Like, regardless of like the other things that you see that makes a really good coach?
Yeah, I think probably one of the things I battle with in that regard is if our coaches or our administrators, it used to be more so common with administrators, but I'm even seeing it with sport coaches where they look at a logo and they're like, oh, that guy worked for them. He knows what he's doing. You look at the resume, and yes, he was with the A10 championships the year that they won, but he was only with them for that year. Is he really going to make that big of a difference? So if it's my concerns, I'm going to express, you have to be straightforward and express those concerns to the coaches and then find a way of, you know, asking the right questions, talking to references, talking to people who they work with who aren't necessarily references to find out did this person really make a difference this year? You have to flush out those concerns yourself, whether it's through the references or personal conversations, and then hopefully the coaches are going to trust you enough that they're going to listen to you and go with whatever decision you're really trying to push. But it's kind of like when we're, you one of the questions you had said to me was creating positions. How do you go about fighting for and creating positions? Very similar to this. You have to show the need and show how you're going to suffer if A is their choice and B is one you really think is the right. Where is the program going to suffer if we go with A? Or how could it? And it's or how much better are we going to be if we go with B as opposed to A? And showing those examples, in this particular case where we had it was a strength coach open for our position. The coaches saw that he had worked for, as I said before, he worked for the A10 champs, and we talked. I put in a fair amount of time trying to talk with this guy's references to find out, is he really going to be what we need? And then also, in addition to that, is he the right personality? And ended up being more of a factor of, it was a personality thing that he's several kind of laid back, but our coaches want someone who's rah rah, and that's going to be what we need right now. Later on down the line might be something a little bit different. But again, trying to show them what's the need, what are we looking for, and how or why not is this individual going to fit that need?
When you're kind of looking at stuff and you're bringing someone on your staff, like one of the most important things is like that personality mesh, because a lot of staffs end up being pretty tight knit, and covering down for anybody that's out and understanding their programming or being able to assist. Like when you have a staff like that, it's important that that person comes in and works well with everybody else, and that finding that right fit oftentimes is really important because like the profession is still fairly young and it's flooded with
Yeah.
new coaches all the time. You're getting a lot
Mhm.
of coaches that are probably like experience or knowledge wise, maybe not experience, but knowledge wise, are already on year like five of five, six, seven, like when we started on like year
Right.
one,
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
that information is more abundant and they can do it. They just don't have the coaching voice or that experience to be able to catch up for it. So
Hmm.
like to your point, like going through that vetting process and really making sure that it's a really good fit, not just a resume talker where it looks good on paper
Yeah.
and they can take that perfect program and then now take it and now VCU's A10 champion just because you're bringing that coach. Like there's too many factors that come into play when you do something like
Right.
that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hey, so looking at like when you originally started, like back at VCU, like I know I don't want to date you, but like back in
Sure.
1998,
Yeah.
that was your first year at VCU, and going into like we said, year 27, you've been through multiple different position changes and been elevated throughout your time, and
Hmm.
your new position title is, I have to say it because it's abundantly long and it's important. Associate Athletics Director for Sports Performance and Student Athlete Wellness at Virginia Commonwealth University. It's a mouthful, but it's well earned for that position. So kind of take us back to like year one and like how the program was initially running in your first year. And then like, can you hit some of maybe like the highlights and big changes that are going now into this current year that's made this department and like yourself grow?
Hmm. So when I started, it was a part-time position. They didn't have a strength coach at VCU, and so they wanted to. They did have a lot of injuries, and so interestingly enough, my original position was funded by the VCU has a medical school. It was funded by the medical school's orthopedic department because they were seeing so many of our student athletes come through their doors with injuries that were resulting of improper training, overuse, etc. So they funded the position. So it was 20 hours a week. I sat down with my boss, who was a director of sports medicine at the time, and he said, "You can work more than 20 hours, but we're not going to pay you." And I was like, "Okay, that's great." And about a year into it, I went back and said, "Look, I see the need for this position." At the time, I didn't do a very good job of expressing it, but I said, "I see a need for the position to go full time." And the guy said, this was my boss at the time. He said, "Every day I look out my window and in my driveway, I'd like to see a Mercedes Benz, but I don't see it." He's like, basically, you can wish in one hand. And, I was like, this is how we're handling this. So, fast forward, then I realized you need to get the support for your coaches. And so I had a lot of, when the position did go full time, about 6 months after that, um, I had a lot of coaches going to bat for me for the position to, for me in the position because they had to open it up. So that was obviously a big turning point. But when I started, our weight room it was in one of the I'll say one of the worst buildings on campus, and I can say that now because they've demolished it. But it was in the basement. It had no windows, one door ending, one door exit, and it was filled with Nautilus. It was knockoff Nautilus equipment that was just. I accepted the position, and then he showed me the weight room, and I was like, "What the fuck did I get myself into?" And so we eventually, once the position went full time, they gave that weight room a fresh paint job. They get rid of the Nautilus, and I taped down some squares on the floor and got some bars to do for Olympic lifting and some bumper plates. Um, Fast forward a year later, the Siegel Center has now been built, and that's our arena where we house our men's basketball, women's basketball, and volleyball teams, and we have some athletic offices in there as well. And there was a weight room, but it was recreational. So, as most people know in athletics, you have the athletic department. The weight room is completely different and separate from the rec side, rec sports. Well, the recreation department had the weight room. Administrators saw a weight room on the blueprints for the building, and they're like, "We don't need to build a weight room. You can train here." So I start training our basketball team in there. It had 4 bench presses, one squat rack, and Monday was a lift day. What's the most busy day in a commercial gym, including recreational gyms? Mondays. So I had 15 guys in line to squat. And so again, realized the power of what coaches can do. I went to our men's basketball coach and I kind of explained the frustration and how I'm having a real hard time getting the guys through here. He said, "Write down everything in email and send it to me." So I did. 2 days later, we had plans for a new weight room to be built. Yeah.
Wow.
So then our Bow Street weight room was built, and that was an interesting experience as well because it was they told me that it was going to be built, and then in an all staff meeting, I found out that it was not going to be built anymore because the art department had been allocated that space. So, and I had coaches turning and looking at me, and they were like, "Based on the look on your face in that meeting, you didn't know anything about that, did you?" And I was like, "Nope." So fast forward, we regained it and lost it 2 more times, and it ended up being a building we had the weight room on the first floor, 3 floors of parking, and then the fifth floor it's what's referred to as the art foundation area. So VCU is a big art school, and that's where all the freshmen go for their classes. So you have the athletes coming into the first floor and the art students going up to the fifth floor. So it was a very unique building, but that's one thing we can say about VCU is we do everything we can to maximize the space because we're an urban campus. We're in the city of Richmond. So having the weight room was a big deal, getting that built, and then several years later, I got an assistant. Actually, our men's basketball coach brought in someone, and so that was my assistant. And I was like, yeah, that's not how this works. Um, of course, I didn't really say it like that. I went out and tried to find another job, got interviews for another job, and was on the process of walking out the door. And they said, "Okay, we'll get you an assistant. We'll do X, Y, Z." And so I ended up getting a full-time assistant. Um, Prior to that, I think I skipped over. I had talked to admins about getting a graduate assistant, and so I got a graduate assistant. After a couple of years, that rolled over into two graduate assistants. Um, and then we took one of the positions that was GA, made it full time. So quite a few milestones in there. And then r recently we've kind of gone. I think we had now have myself, four full time coaches, and a graduate assistant, and so we're trying to figure out what's coming because NIL has affected us. We've had 2 years of a 15% budget cut. We lost a personnel, one staff member. And so you know, there's a lot of questions about what's going to be happening, where money is coming from, et cetera. And to be honest with you, I have done a very poor job of keeping up to date with NIL until this last year because I didn't think it was anything that was going to come through that quickly or be that abrupt. And wow, did it ever.
Yeah, the NIL thing is kind of crazy. And I don't know if anybody really has a full grasp on it, unless you're at the very top where
Hmm.
like it immediately impacts you because if you're not making those changes daily, which what it seems like, you could be left in the dust, and that's a lot of money to be lost at the top. Everybody else that
Yep.
kind of falls a little bit farther down the totem pole, like if you're not in the Power Four, like if you're lower in some of maybe the conferences that are kind of scraping to see whether or not you're going to go into that $20 million like buy-in or whatever it is.
Hmm.
Um, you're kind of riding both sides of the fence. What's
Yeah.
sustainable? What's going to actually go well for you? Are you trying to jump conferences? Are you trying to stay put? Are you getting rid of sports? Like there's so many different factors that kind of come into play. Like I don't envy anybody that sits in those meetings and then
Yeah.
the next day is like, hey, that whole plan we've been working on for 3 months, like they just scrapped it. We got to start over.
Yeah. Yeah, and interestingly enough, I think it was 21, the probably the start of the 22 academic school year. Uh, my boss had come through and said, "Hey, let's look at revamping the weight room, whole new weight." He was like, "I said, what do you want to look at?" He said, "Everything, new weight room floor, new equipment, new stereo system." And then 6 months later, exactly what you said, scrap it.
It's crazy to kind of see that stuff. And I mean, obviously, I'm sure you're the exact same way as me, and any strength coach is probably the same way. Like it's hard to wrap around the fact that like we preach development and we preach to performance and everybody wants to see wins, losses, they want to see development, they want to see athletes graduate, be successful, go on to win championships, be successful in the classroom, all these things. Like it takes time.
Hmm.
And the one place that you're going to see every single student athlete is the weight room. You're not going to see everybody in the training room because hopefully not everybody's injured. And like you
Right.
can still do rehab in the weight room. You're not going to see everybody on the field because some people are in the pool and some people are on the
Hmm.
court, some people are on the diamond. Like it makes no sense that you don't use that centralized hub as
Hmm.
like your focal point for everything and then build out because
Right.
you're going to have a touch point with every single athlete in that weight room at some point in time, weekly, like daily, it doesn't matter. Like you're going to see that space, and that space is going to get utilized more than anywhere else on campus. Before we kind of move on, like it's just impressive. And like any coach that's kind of newer into the profession. I mean, even me that's been like I started interning in 2009 and even I like wasn't I've heard of some of the stories of like not yours in particular, but other places where that's where that university and that's where like that strength and conditioning department started from.
Hmm.
And like, I mean, remember when I was looking at like your guys' old weight room and like when I was looking for GA positions and stuff like way back, like 10 plus years ago, your department was still a little bit bigger than it was, but it's not what it is now. And I had no idea that like where it started from. So I wish more coaches, I mean, even myself more need to appreciate the position I'm in and like where I came from, but other coaches that are coming in, like
Hmm.
that kind of come in with a lot of this entitlement and like, oh, they see every this big school, every coach only has one sport. They travel with them, they get this much gear, they're getting this. Like, not every place is like that, and not every
No.
place even remotely close to started from that. So you need to work your way up from the bottom in this profession is an apprenticeship style profession. You need to
Hmm.
work and you need to observe, you need experience, you need coaching time. Otherwise, like, don't even talk to me about a full-time job.
Right. Yeah.
Dang. Well, like I guess on that subject too, like outside of all the NIL, outside of college and coaching in general, like where do you kind of see like this profession going? Like if you sitting down, like are we in a good kind of place, bad place? Is it kind of neutral? Like just kind of looking back on your start of your career, like almost 30 years ago, like up until this point, like trajectory wise, like are we kind of trending in the right direction, or do you see like we're kind of coming to a point where we need to like pick or choose a certain direction and really to really elevate this career, kind of like athletic training has done to go the entry level masters, like and go the medical
Mhm.
route. Like that's a big step. Like
Yeah.
what where does strength conditioning kind of need to go to elevate our kind of profession?
That's a great question, and I think are we trending in the right direction with the cost of education? No, because you're going to come out of just your 4-year degree, not even your master's. Hopefully you can get your master's paid for, but you're going to come out of your 4-year degree with considerable debt, and you're going to go into a position that if you're making 50, that's really good, and especially your first year, you're not going to. So you're in the hole, and the chances of you getting out of that hole for the rest of your life are pretty slim. And I was very fortunate that one, the cost of education when I went through it was not that much, and I don't have any student loans. Um, I'm also one of the few strength coaches out there that doesn't have a master's. I do have 26 years of experience, so that kind of speaks for itself. But so that coupled with the fact that as you said, it's an apprentice style internship that I do think we're going to have to move towards. And as you pointed out, athletic training, we are a very young profession. Athletic training is 10 years ahead of us. So when people are looking at the various your professions are like, well, the athletic trainers are making more than us. Well, they're also, corporate America is also doing a whole lot better than we are. Well, corporate America is a whole lot, it's much older than strength and conditioning is, you know. So they've got that established pattern, and so now the difficulty is, can universities afford to keep us and pay us what we should be paid? Well, realistically, I don't think very many universities can do that. And when I go through the process of trying to hire someone, that's very eye-opening to me, because when I'm talking to individuals and I'm seeing how many sports they're working with, it's it's a big disparity between, your lower Division I schools and a mid-major like VCU, whereas most of our coaches have two, at most three sports. These other coaches I'm talking to have four or five and are doing travel with one or two of those teams. And I mean, that's not sustainable. So, no, the next question, and I'm sure you're thinking, and everybody else is asking, well, would you encourage someone else to go in this profession? And as you said, you have to love it. In high school, I worked a job as a grocery bagger. and I hated it. I don't know if we're allowed to curse on here, but I was like, I don't know how people can go to work every day and despise their job. And so I was like, I'm not going to do that. And I realized that she's like tearing apart the door. I realized that I was like, I'm not going to do this. And so I'm going to have to take a pay cut. My father was a doctor. My brothers are 10 and 11 years older than me. And by that time, they were doctors. And so I was like, okay, I'm already the black sheep. I'll just continue that trend and I'll become a coach. But the point was, I knew I was going to have to take a pay cut to do something I loved. And I think that's pretty consistent across the board. You find people in service positions, whether it's police, fire, etc., and they do it because they want to help people. They love it. Um, and or they stay in it because they love it. And it's that's a tough question to answer. So
Yeah, it's definitely a loaded question. And like, I know we were talking before we got on here too. Like, it's the same, it's a double-edged sword when it comes to like the service profession and like you're in it for like as a servant leader, you're coming in because you love the profession, you love coaching, you want to give back to the athletes, like you like athletics, like whatever the reason is, like you win it for like a pure reason because you just like are passionate about doing that. At the end of the
mhm,
day, like you also have to balance the other side of it is like I gotta pay rent. I gotta like hopefully have a house, like family, kids, whatever it is, like down the line, there's other people that rely on me for financially for income. Like insurance isn't
yeah,
cheap and like these part-time jobs don't cover medical. They don't do a lot of stuff like this. Like at some point in time, these professional like they you have to be able to save some, or you have to be able to have some sort of incentives or administrators and people that are in higher positions, I think need to start realizing that you can't just work people to the bone 52 weeks out of the year and then
yeah,
expect them to just like take it. Or
mm,
but the problem is I think it's a revolving door where the next
yeah,
coach that just came has his master's degree or she has her undergrad degree and has experience like you say that job's 30 and they'll do it for 20. The next person
yep,
will do it for 15 and then it waters down the profession and then it starts lowballing us and then we're just in this loop of someone will do it more for cheaper.
hmm,
And it never allows us to elevate it unless you start seeing notoriety and wins. And that's why you see like the ones at the top continue to kind of slowly trickle up, and everybody else is either you're going to stay because of an area, you're going to stay because of a team, you're going to stay because of loyalty, or you're making your way up in it. But
hmm,
also, like, let's be honest too, like, you're the only director that VCU's ever had. There's
hmm,
only one of you in the whole country, and I don't even know if you know how many assistants have come through VCU in your time, and not a single one of them has been the head. You're the only head.
yeah,
So it's very difficult for some people to get into a career where you can't get to the top and make like the highest ranking level
hmm,
without going somewhere else.
right, yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
and
I,
that is a difficult thing. But as to your point, too many people are trying to elevate themselves by they take a lateral move position wise, but for $3,000 more because X university wouldn't pay them, and it's even if they're going to pay for your move, you're going to lose money in that deal in the long run. And it's having the whole process of starting over, et cetera. It's not easy.
Yeah, I know. No, that's a great point. So when it comes to like progressing yourself like in your career, like you've been able to climb the ladder, like so to speak, like in VCU, going from part-time, going all the way up, like to associate AD, and then now like to your current title within the course of that time, which is impressive. And you've taken on other responsibilities that fall outside of coaching and everything too. But for other coaches that are either trying to elevate themselves in their current role, like at their university or in private sector or whatever kind of venture they work in, how do you kind of approach like making yourself like indispensable as a coach and like making yourself like vying for yourself like you did with those coaches to really like fight for you in that position? How do you make other people like really see your value when it's hard to kind of explain and quantify like all the benefits that a coach can bring to a program and to like a student athlete.
The biggest thing is to get the support of your coaches because your coaches are going to be able to express their need because at the end of the day, the administration wants the coaches' wins and losses to improve. And so having a coach who's pretty vocal about what they need, or if we have a graduate assistant and we're losing someone who's good every 2 years, how much of a difference having someone in a permanent position is going to make for them. Having those coaches, you're expressing to them these things and they're seeing it happen. And it sometimes when you have someone who comes to you with complaints, that's a great time to say, okay, we need to go to administration about this in order to get it fixed, and I need your help with this. Because at the end of the day, strength coaches don't make decisions. We can inform everyone who does make those decisions, but it's realistically, it's going to be someone else's call. Um, and especially when it comes to money making decisions. And that's, you know, so getting those people who are the most vocal, who are going to express, and especially express if something is dissatisfactory, they're going to go to administration and talk to them about it and say, hey, we need to fix this, and here's how we can fix it. Talk to Kontos.
That's a good point too. Like we don't really make the decisions, and unless you're thinking ahead, a lot of times the things that seem, in my experience, I've seen like that come across an administrative's desk because they're not always in the weight room. They like pop in from time to time, but usually it's like an agenda. Like they're showing someone around. They're not
Mm.
really just kind of popping in. Their schedule's busy. They have a lot of stuff on their plate, despite what I think they do,
Mhm.
which is not much. But if the only thing that's coming across your desk as an administrator is something negative, like from a sport coach or from like a student athlete, and as like a strength coach or like the head of a program or the director, you're not kind of seeking out with some of those good complaints of things like the resources you might need or problems that are coming up, but like here's a solution that you're presenting, or hey, like our assistants are doing this really well. Like we're on track with these numbers, and administrators aren't seeing that stuff. All they're thinking about is the negative side of it. That builds that kind of negative connotation in their mind, and they're pretty quick to like pull the trigger or shoot down any ideas that you might have as a department when you come in asking for something, rather than already like get ahead of the curve and like control the narrative in a way about like what is actually beneficial coming out of your department. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hey, so I guess it's changed a lot too, like because you started just full on coaching. Like I'm sure it was old school days, like all hands on deck, like team after team, assembly line, next one's
Yeah.
in. What sport are you even? Like I guess I can change the lift for this.
Right. Yeah.
But you've learned like a little bit over time, like the administrative side and kind of like morphing into some of those positions where your oversight of coaches and potentially sports and other things of that nature. Is that just general experience kind of learning on the fly, or like how did you kind of get up to speed with some of those things that maybe don't really come learning about like the
Yeah.
administrative when you're just in the weight room all day?
I think a lot of it I picked up from reaching out to other coaches because I was the director and the first strength coach, and I started off pretty young. And to be honest with you, probably shouldn't have been in that position at the time. But reaching out to individuals at my same level, how are they handling these situations? You know, coach wants guys to eat, guys wants guys to gain weight, but I can't get them to eat. I don't have any control over that. How do you handle this? And getting ideas from that. And that's more from the coaching side of things, but that also was very much so from the administrator side of things. One of my good friends, Rick Canners, he's at Jacksonville University now, but he started off at Longwood University as a part-time strength coach very similarly and rose through the ranks up to deputy AD at Longwood before getting hired at Jacksonville. And he was one of the first administrators I knew, or first strength coaches to be over sports medicine. And when I was offered the position over sports medicine, he was my first call, and he said, take it. But so that's, reaching out to those people around you. How do you handle these situations? How do you get someone to see the light? And he may say, okay, I don't have experience with this, but I know so and so at Duquesne University did that. And so reaching out to networking, trying to get answers to your issues. And there's things that you can also go to those people around you, but as an administrator or a strength coach over strength and conditioning, sports performance, and sports medicine, I'm going to have a very different set of issues than most of my administrators are.
Right.
And
Yeah, and
so going to other people who have that experience as opposed to another business person.
yeah, and I think, I mean, I'm not talking from experience, but just like kind of looking at your situation and everything too. Like we talked about, you're the only head coach there, like on the strength conditioning side, and like the same with your position, like your unique experience and like what you oversee and like what your job description looks like. There's no one really on the staff at VCU at all that you can really say, hey, this is the situation I'm in. This is the experience I have. Like, what would you do? Because you have to go outside of like kind of your local area and you have to reach out to other people in your network that have a similar experience and similar kind of jobs if you're going to try to get any insight at all. And networking has to be that area when like you're one of one at a school. It's got to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are going to be certain situations that if one of my good friends is our head volleyball coach, and he's a great coach, and he is he's a great mentor to his athletes. And so going to him with even some of my administrative issues, unless it's super, super specific, you know, he's going to have a good mind to be able to get things done the right way. And those are the people I'm going to, gravitate to.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I mean, there's resources abundantly available at a university or within, I mean, within an athletic department, within the school too. Like there's countless times that I've gone, like when I was working the university setting, that I've talked to people that aren't in just athletics, like in the rec side, like picking their brain and like how they order equipment or how they like check people in, like schedules and stuff like that, like developing those relationships. Like at Fresno, the guy I talked to probably the most every single day was the guy that like came in and mopped the floors in the morning because it was just
Uh,
me and him like before wrestling, like before the first group in the morning. We're the only ones in there, and
yeah,
we talk all the time. So there's so much outside of just kind of like your department that you can reach out to, and there's a plethora of resources and like good feedback you can get from someone that is a little bit more detached too than just another coach in the weight room that probably has a
yeah,
similar viewpoint that you have.
right, right, yeah.
So when it comes to like this experience, I know I would have liked to do this a little bit more as well because I still, for the life of me, don't really know a lot of the administrative tasks that happen. Like, how important is it for younger coaches to kind of step outside of like the weight room and like that dungeon and do a little bit more than just spend time on the floor coaching? And like, how would you suggest that a young coach like maybe starts thinking a little bit more of like administrative things if they want to elevate their career like 10 years down the road and fill a similar role like yourself?
So some of the things that I did, I think that's probably the best place to start, just volunteering yourself for anything that comes along. In an all-staff meeting, if they say we're looking for a group to put together a committee to figure out who's going to be in our Hall of Fame, that was probably one of the first things I volunteered for. And it's just to get me in front of other administrators, one, showing that I care about the department, but two, I can put together a few words other than one, two, three. I had a volleyball ref tell me one time, he was like, "Oh, you're a strength coach? What do you specialize in counting to 10?" Pretty funny. Anyway, but where was I?
Volunteering
Yeah,
and getting out in
yeah.
front
So
of everything.
volunteering, yeah, and then another committee came through that I had volunteered for, and then it was if there's something that you want, ask for it. And I had asked for a title change at one point in time, and then that's when I was elevated to assistant athletic director. Then when I started looking at trying to get the associate director position, we had gotten a new athletic director, and they had a set criteria. And so I talked with my boss about it, and I didn't meet probably half the criteria, but he was like, you can put in a petition. So one of the things was you needed to be an associate AD at VCU, you needed to have sport oversight. And my thought was that's a conflict of interest because if I have sport oversight and I give them a premium time in the weight room, someone else is going to get PO'd about that. So it's probably in you all's best interest that I'm not having sport oversight. And I said, one of the other criteria was having a master's. At that point, I'd been in the field for 15 years, and there weren't too many administrators that had that much experience in the department. So they were able to say, okay, yeah, we can see this, and then push for the need for it. And then from there was on what we refer to, we call ourselves the Senior Athletic Leadership Team, or SALT. So at VCU in the athletic department, we have our primary administrator, decision maker is the cabinet, and then SALT is just below them. We meet with them once a month, talk about the different projects that the department is working on, and try and get information from administration down to the people that have boots on the ground. Because there was so much when it was specific to VCU and certain departments where they would just sit around and commiserate and talk about all the bad things in the department. And they, in their 1 to 2 years of experience, would come up with all these grandiose ideas on how they're going to fix the department. And then when you start asking questions, oh, that's a great idea. Where's the funding from that going to come from? It's blank stares. So then I felt the need to try and explain, help inform people that here's how this works. There's multi-step process to, if you want to change your weight room time, there's a lot of things we have to go through. We have to look at academic class schedules. We have to look at facility schedules. And the other thing is we have to look at the weight room schedule because we have one weight room at VCU. And so it's packed from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And if one team shifts, somebody else has to shift. Otherwise, you're sharing weight room time. So my point is, it's just it's a trickle down effect. And so in informing people of how the process works, and it's not just as easy as snap your fingers and pay for this or do that. Um, yeah. So volunteering as much as you can, and then trying to do whatever you can to help with the department. And I remember it was Kaz Kazadi who, at a CSCCA national conference, he was one that said that. He was like, make yourself indispensable so that if you leave, well, he's not just a strength coach. He's also over the nutrition department. He's also over sports medicine. He's also one of our mentors in the athletic department. And they're going to really realize, okay, we're not just losing a coach, we're losing someone who wears six different hats.
Yeah, that's a great point. And like, I think coaches already often do that. And like, we're already talking about it, like time in the weight room, like helping out at practice or warming them up prior to matches and games, things like there's like so many things that already make us kind of indispensable or like very kind of multifaceted within what our role is, but you still have to be able to kind of step outside that a little bit without taking away from like what your main priority is, which is like the performance of the athletes, like reducing the risk of injury, like getting them prepared, like to excel on the field and like their sport of choice. But there's still other things, like to your point, that you can kind of step out and make yourself a little bit more like well known or like recognizable too. I think that's like another big thing, like for head coaches, like to know a lot of the other teams that maybe you don't directly work with because it's ultimately your department. And so you're the face of the program in a lot of ways. And for the face of the program and for the department in general to kind of be out in front a little bit more of the whole athletic department, I think only sheds a little bit more positive light on what is happening in the weight room when people are still sleeping and people
Mhm.
are have long been at home. Like that's one of the craziest things about it is like coaches will walk through and like at 10 a.m. and they'd be like, "Oh, why you look so tired?" It's like, "I've been here for 5 fucking hours. What do you mean?" It's like
Yeah.
it's like you got your coffee and donuts. Like, I'm sorry they were sold out at that time, but like I've already been here. That place wasn't even open when I got to work.
Yeah. 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 And they come
Different.
in and why is it so quiet? And it's like, you just stop talking.
Yeah, yeah, we're not putting music on for the next hour. I can't hear the same song for the 10th time already.
But back to your original question, I do think it's a good idea for us to get out of the weight room so that we can show people that we are human beings. We do have a personality outside of what they see in there. And also your interactions with people outside of the specific department, whether it's at a social function or, if I'm talking with someone at an all staff meeting compared to having a business interaction with them about their team, it's going to be a different interaction and you're going to get a different take on that person. And those things that helps build relationships. And
Yeah,
that's
that
what we're all supposed to be all about, right?
yeah, that human element and like developing those relationships, like especially with some of the Olympic teams where you don't maybe see them as often. Like I'm sure volleyball and like when you had baseball and some of these other sports where they were coming in all the time and you're with them all
Mhm.
the time, it's easier to kind of like coach them up really hard and then like also have some opportunities where you can kind of sprinkle in like almost like not like coach Kontos a little bit. Like you can kind of have more personal
Yeah.
interactions and learn about them. But some
Hmm.
of those teams that come in like 2 times a week, or they're the first ones to cut out a lift because they're sore or like they want to give them an extra off day, is like the only time you see me is when I'm just jamming it down your throat because
Yeah.
it's the only time I get you. So this is the only person you get. You get coach and you get this needs to get done today because you're gonna bag a lift again next week. So
Yeah.
I'm not doing my job. I'm doing you a disservice if we
Mhm.
sit and chit chat and foam roll for 15 minutes when what you really need is a boot in your ass.
Yeah. And but it's also the art of it too, is trying to find those times to be able to make those connections. Um, but yeah, and I probably did too much of too much of the all business in my earlier days. And then, yeah, so it does make it difficult.
I know. I think too, like within time, like you're really early in your career, like it's a lot more difficult or you overthink a little bit in ways like how to make the perfect program or what you're going to do when the team comes in. And then with experience and kind of with some wisdom as you get more adept and like understand what's going to happen when they come in and you can kind of anticipate and you can read the room a little bit and get a feel for what's going to happen in that train session. You can make programs up on the fly, like you can adjust if like the coaches has them late, if an athlete comes in with like this like little tweak or injury. But like when you're first in your career, it's all business because it's chaos. So you feel
Hmm.
like the only way you can do it is prepare as much over as you can ahead of time because inevitably something's going to come in and go wrong. But I think with experience, all the things that go wrong, it's just a chaotic tornado, but you can organize it because you can just think on the fly a lot more because you've already experienced everything that's happening.
Yeah, yeah. And that's it's also dealing with injuries. It's the first time you deal with the ACL tear, you deal with an ankle sprain. It's like, okay, what can they do? What can't they do? And then after time, there's not a whole lot that I have not seen, having been in athletics for 26 years. And um, but kind of going back for a second and talking about, you had asked, is it important to have coaches in administrator positions? And I absolutely do, because even if someone has been in athletics their entire life as an administrator or as a coach, they still don't have the understanding of what it is that we do. And so when you can sit, however the case is, if you sit down and lay out your day of what you're doing when you're doing it, and they're like, "Oh wow, I had no idea." That because I'm going to be the person that's pushing to get this GA to a full-time role. Here's what the coach's expectations are, and here's how many hours that takes. And this person's in a graduate assistant position, and they don't have that many hours. Um, so being able to speak the same language as them and, you know, help everyone move in the right direction is that much more important. But it takes someone with that connection with the boots on the ground as well as administration.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, and I think administrators need to understand like a little bit of like what that element looks like, that day to day, like coaching, like speed and tempo. And, but at the same time, they do need to be removed because they ultimately have to make some of those decisions too. And it's nice to be detached, but you need to come you need to be able to make those decisions with at least some understanding of what's the repercussions of this decision. Because,
Mhm.
like you said, the trickle down effect of even just changing one team's weight room time can affect the other 22 sports and the other 15 hours of a day that are scheduled for that weight room.
Mhm.
Like you could be an administrator and like look on your like perfect Excel document and say, hey, if we cut this thing, we're in the black. But you cut that one thing and you have no idea like what happens and what the consequences of that decision are because you don't understand what coaches or athletic trainers or different like components of like that performance model look like you're in a world of hurt, or you just put everybody else's job like into overdrive because you're trying to make up for
Yeah.
your decision.
hmm Yeah, and that's where you can go to the administration and say, "Hey, look, we're going to lose someone because all this is falling on their shoulders."
Yeah, good point. It's
Or
great to
now,
have an advocate like yourself like in that role because of that and be able to kind of fight for those other coaches and also I mean, even if there's not an administrator in every single one of those, every one of those departments, I still think there needs to be some sort of representation of them because even as strength coaches, you're not going to really know exactly what everyone in athletic training does. So to have an athletic training representative in there to kind
Mhm.
of like say from their point of view and like how this affects them day to day and their job and their responsibilities, like that's super important. And it's just hearing it through someone else like isn't the same as actually having someone at the table that can like speak up in that moment and say, "Hey, listen, in my professional opinion, this isn't going to work."
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, so you talked a little bit about like athletic injuries and stuff, and like you said in the beginning, like VCU was all like your part-time position was because of all the injuries that kind of came in.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've seen a plethora of them throughout your career and have to deal with athletes in so many different aspects, whether a career kind of cut short or like maybe elongated because they came back like better recovered. Like
Mhm.
how have you kind of personally though dealt with like some of those injuries or maybe some of those conversations with athletes because you yourself going through your powerlifting career and just strength training career, like inevitably sometimes those things are going to happen. Like, does it give you a little bit more of a leg up, like to have those conversations that feel real personal when knowing that you've kind of had them yourself as well?
Yeah, I'll say this. I wouldn't be, and is kind of fucked up, but I wouldn't be the coach that I am today if I was injury free. Because every time I got injured, I started, increasing my knowledge about whether it was the shoulder, low back, knees, etc. Um, Trying to figure out one, why did this happen to me? Two, how can I prevent it from happening? And then it was my first injury was a shoulder injury, and then it very quickly became it's. I realized the power of being able to speak from experience that, when I had my first surgery, my mom was, rest her soul, was very diligent about saying, okay, look, the day after surgery is going to be the most painful. Make sure you're on a regular medication routine because very often they're sick and tired of already being on, uh, having gone through the surgery, going through, being nauseous, whatever from pain meds, but staying on them, keeping it regular. And most people, they don't realize that. Yeah, the doctor is going to tell you that, but when you have someone speak from experience that you need to stay on a regular pain schedule, pain medicine schedule to make sure that you're pain free. It goes a long way, but Yeah, so I've hurt just about everything under the sun, and can speak to a lot of different injuries, and also say, okay, look, the rehab process, it's going to be two steps forward, one step back. And you can say that to someone, but you then by saying you need to realize that when you have that step back, it's not the end of the world, it's just a step back. Reevaluate, and then you make two steps forward.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
love that.
yeah.
That's
So
it's a hard concept to kind of learn for people too. Like, and it's easy probably like on the outside to say that, but knowing the recovery that you went through and like some of the difficult like transitions from it, like just surgery alone is surgery. Like, I mean, people can be anxious about it or go into it and like have all these different worried thoughts about whether the career is over, like what are they going to do? Like, should I leave this school? Like, who knows like what kind of thoughts are going through their mind, but the rehab process of like, hey, it's just not a day of surgery and then like 2 days I'm out of the hospital, but the rehab process of like, hey, this is 3 to 12 months of
Mhm.
just like, hey, I can't lift my arm over my shoulder for 3 months. Hey, I can only lift it up like to 90 degrees for another 3 months. Hey, I can move it and abduct and crow go across like for
Mhm.
3 months. Hey, maybe I can put my arms over my head in month 12. Like to think of it in
Yeah.
that length of terms, like that's
Mhm.
got to be debilitating and it's got to be just like mentally exhausting and probably like self-defeating if that's the only thing you focus on. But like you said, like coming from experience and knowing that you're going to take some steps forward, but there's inevitably going to be like a slide back, like being able to handle that and really process that's got to be the key thing when it comes to like rehab process.
And I mean, even just because I'm informing them that it's going to happen doesn't make it that much easier to go through, or give them the tools to be able to deal with it. It's just information, what the individual does with it. Hopefully, they're going to put it to good use. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's got to play a huge factor into it though when like you see athletes that are talking about it and are like you kind of see the wheels spinning or you can kind of see like the panic behind their eyes when they're doing rehab with you or they're trying to return to play and you're able to kind of just relay back to some of the experiences you have and kind of give your situation of like what happened and how you kind of had to process it because it's if you can relate to an athlete and you can show them there's a light at the end of the tunnel, even like maybe if you didn't step back on the platform or it shifted your goals, like that athlete still can see that there's something positive to be made from it and that nothing's going to go wrong with like trying to press forward.
yeah, yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
so like how nowadays, like shifting gears a little bit, like what does your training look like? Is it as much of the barbell movements and like squat, bench, deadlift like it used to be? Or I know competitions might not be there for a little bit, but what's it look like now? And then how do you kind of reassess maybe some of your goals or like markers and kind of objectives to kind of keep you either motivated or disciplined to stay on track with your own training because it's a little bit different nowadays.
Yeah, so I had my neck fused C4 through C7. Um, yeah. Uh, I never had a whole lot of neck mobility to begin with, so that was a good thing because I didn't lose a whole lot. But it put a, I retired after that because it's even though you're not putting a tremendous amount of stress. Well, I won't say that because I had three levels fused. So yeah, it's so I do virtually no barbell movements anymore. It's been a tremendous adjustment for me, and I'm still going through it. It's my goal now is to be pain-free, and I absolutely hate the term functional in regard to strength and conditioning, but realistically, my workouts now are looking like I'm mimicking yard work, digging, whatever, and a lot of prehab rehab, but just yeah, trying to stay pain free and stay in the gym because I realized that, for me it was I loved chasing numbers. That was the one aspect about powerlifting that I loved. Whether it was bodybuilding or powerlifting, if you could do one more rep than you did last week, it's immediate gratitude and feedback that you're doing something right. So that's what really drove me with powerlifting was chasing numbers. Well, I can't chase a whole lot of numbers anymore, one, and those numbers aren't nearly what they used to be, two. So it's a different mind frame. I'm starting to get to the point where I'm comfortable working out in public because I'm trying to hide what I am now compared to what I used to be. But the expression comparison is the death of joy could not be any more true in my case than anybody else's. So I'm trying not, I'm a different person than I am now. I'm a different person now than I was then. And so just trying to keep things in perspective.
Yeah,
But
yeah, go on.
it's also something, it's like you have an association with what you do, maybe compared to, comparing yourself to your athletes. Heaven forbid you're doing something like that. And we're working with the best of the best. And I was as strong, or if not stronger, than most of my baseball players. That's not the case anymore. And so you, I had to come to the realization that so I've lost probably about 40 pounds since I had my neck fused, and realizing that 185-pound version of me and a 220-pound version of me coaching a group of 15 volleyball players, it's what's coming out, and that I care for them, care for their success, and for them to progress pain free. That's what's going to come out, not my appearance. And I could be white haired and 5'2" and 100 pounds, and if I can show them that those things, that I care about them, care about their success, care about them, and can show them how, and then you earn their trust, and then they see the success in what they do.
No, that's great. And that's a big injury to kind of come back from. And like it's not only just the physical side of the injury, but like you said, like just kind of almost that identity like shift that you have to undertake. And especially as a coach, like where you're out in front of these athletes that are trying to perform at their highest level, and a lot of them are really fantastic athletes. And a lot of strength coaches like might not have been the best athletes, but when you come into the weight room, like you can bury a lot of these kids like in your heydays. And
Hmm.
for some of the teams like that, that's a huge thing of like kind of what builds a little bit of buy-in and trust, like that you know what you're talking about. Because just like a car salesman, you can go up and kind of like preach everything you know about the car, but it's an unfair advantage that you looked at the car, like they're telling you about the car and you just know you want a car. The athletes, like, if you show them, like, hey, I got a 37-inch vert, and they're like, yeah, prove it. And then you touch it and they're like, what are you doing? Or like, hey, I'll bury that squat. And you go over and you're demoing what they were doing for a work set. And they're just like,
Hmm.
it's done. It's done.
Yeah.
You got them hook, line, and sinker forever at that
Hmm.
point in time. And it's difficult, I think, in your career to like understand the things that you're doing now. Like, hey, you can't always rely on that forever. And I'm not
Yeah.
going to be as athletic as them throughout my entire career. I don't want to be the guy that just says, hey, back in my heyday, I could do this.
Yeah.
You found new ways to kind of relate to them and coach them and show your personality and like show your care and build trust in different ways. And I think a lot of coaches, I hope, will like learn from that and try to do that earlier in your career so that you can use both sides of it. You can build that trust and like and your tone and your verbiage and how you communicate with them, but you can also like kind of back it up with your training and learn from experience as well. Because at some point in time, like you're not going to be able to hit another PR in the same way.
Yeah. 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 There was a point in time where I remember it just midday workout, went and squatted, and I was like, I'll always be able to squat 405. Nope.
Well, it's hard to think about it, and you get to that point where you're like, I don't want to think about that day yet, and but it's coming. You just don't know when that clock is gonna hit.
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't just my neck that caused the retirement, but it was just one thing after the other. I started having a lot of low back issues, went to the doctor, and um, I ended up going through a quite extensive process with pain management. And towards the end of that whole saga, the doctor was like, "Are you familiar with Ronnie Coleman?" And I was like, "Fuck you, dude." Like, whatever, man. Like you really you stay in your lane, I'll stay in mine. What can I do to be pain free? So it was like, don't do what Ronnie Coleman does.
Makes sense. Well, I
Sure.
mean, I mean, the big thing for you is like you found ways to kind of make coaching and training like that kind of competitive atmosphere, like something lasts for a lifetime. And it's although the goals and like the process of how you do it has shifted, like a lot of the intangibles and like the dedication you have for it is still there. So that's got to be awesome. Like, I guess I'll ask you this one too, because you are in that unique position. And like you said, you petitioned when your position became available based off of like the criteria they were looking for someone for that
Hmm.
position, like having a master's degree and like maybe having some of those things. You have so much experience, like under the bar experience, on the floor coaching experience, networking, like you have all this under your belt. Like, what is better, like experience or education when it comes to a strength coach? Or at some point in time, is it balanced or is it forever balanced?
It's got to be I would have to say the under the bar experience is probably more important than the education. Is you have someone who, I'll say this, when I first started, information wasn't readily available. So you had to go and seek it out. So if you have someone who has the under the bar experience, who's seeking out, why is this making me bigger? Or why is this making me stronger? Trying to figure those things out. Yeah, they're probably gonna get there. I don't know. That's a tough one. I yeah, I don't know. I'm probably gonna gravitate towards someone who's got more barbell experience than education. But it does definitely has to be a balance because one of the things that we've found in strength and conditioning, whether it's powerlifting, bodybuilding, whatever, is you do something and it works, and then you go in the lab and figure out why it works. So someone who's just has the education is not going to know, you know, okay, if you're doing a 20 rep set of squats, yes, that's going to be great to build up lactic acid tolerance. I don't even know if that's true, but they're not going to know what that feels like. And they're not going to know that, yeah, I really don't want to do a set of 20 reps on squats because I'm going to be vomiting and my whole day is going to be ruined.
Yeah, it's a
So
great point.
you got to have that balance.
Yeah, and I asked that too because a lot of the coaches now that are coming into it, like the joke is, well, the unfortunate joke of the matter is you have to have a master's degree to be an unpaid intern, is what the profession seems like it's going towards.
Yeah.
And like I don't necessarily agree with it to like the point that you're saying where like it's a balance between the two, the same as it's a balance between the science and the art of it, is there's a balance between the education, like the formal education and like the experience. And I think that no matter which one you're doing first, if the other one isn't soon to follow, you're in trouble. And if you're in
Yeah.
classes and you're only going through that education program and you're only going through as an undergraduate, I know from my undergraduate, I don't remember them doing much of anything in the weight room. All I
Right.
remember is all my time just volunteering, volunteering, volunteering in the weight room. And then as I'd go through that, I'd like correlate to what I was learning in the class. And I wish it was more so the same, like medical, like where there's clinical routes where, hey, you're doing this rotation, you're kind of
Mhm.
getting quizzed as you go, you learn it, And then at the same time, like now you get to go out and shadow people and like see how you take that and apply it.
Mhm.
And that's, I still think that's the best thing to do. And I think a lot of coaches are that way too, where they're visual, they also need to feel it. You can't just kind of preach it on a board and them just be expected to go regurgitate it to a group full of athletes that aren't going to believe that shit. They're not going to believe what
Yeah.
you're trying to sell them.
Yeah. And you have to have the people who have the under the bar, the experience, well, let's say if you get someone who comes in with just the education, they've never really lifted, or even, there's the education, there's the lifting under the bar experience, and then there's the passion about sports. So people are passionate about sports who don't have those other two. That's the premier thing. They're not going to last because they're going to come in. They're not going to be able to. They don't have that desire. They love sports, love being around it, and back to the original. One of the first questions of whether or not I would what are we trending in the right direction? When you get people who just love being around sports, they don't make very good strength coaches. I find that they have a tendency to be they're a logo chaser, looking for the next best thing, but they're not trying to perfect their craft. They're not trying to get better or more knowledgeable in what they do. They just love being around it.
Yeah, it's
That's true with any profession, I would say. And I also think that's kind of some of the difficulties with just modern education is it's a lot of regardless of the field, you get a lot of the background, but not the practical application. And I don't think I think where we're different than most fields, we work more hours for less pay, but you have, as you said, you have to have a master's to come in to be entry level and get dirt pay or no pay at all. Whereas other professions, you'll get into it, make low pay, but not nearly work as many hours. So,
right. There's not much time left in the day for you to be able to kind of do all the other things to kind of stay up to date with it. And I mean, I've even found that too. Like there's some days that like seem like they drag on forever. Like if I've gone away for a couple times for like long durations for like military leave and training,
mhm.
and I'm shut off from like the coaching world, and I'll come back a couple months later and I'll like some things will change and I'll go back to work and be like, how's everything going? It's like same as usual. Like we get so caught up in like how busy things are day to day, but when you start looking at it on a grand scale, it's like it's slowly moving. So if we could find ways to kind of like slow it down and kind of take out a lot of the BS that ends up being in some of these coaching roles, I think
Mhm.
people will get a lot more happier with their profession. They'll build that passion back up more so, and you'll get people that want to stay in it a little bit longer as well too.
Yeah, and then you have to find someone to do the dregs that those strength coaches just don't want to do.
And they're never gonna leave those jobs either too. So that
No.
one job like in that state or in that like conference, like it's never gonna happen because that guy's never gonna leave it. So yeah. Hey, there it is right there.
Mhm.
Awesome, coach. Well, hey, like any good training session, we got to end the show with the finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and maybe overtime at the end.
Okay.
You can shoot them off from the hip rapid fire or expand on any of them if you see fit. But you ready?
Yep.
All right, first one I got for you. Biggest influence in the strength and conditioning profession and biggest influence in powerlifting.
Oh, Louis Simmons,
Both
hands down.
across the board.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because he heavily influenced. One of my main philosophies, if you get the athlete stronger, a lot of the things will take care of themselves. Now, am I trying to make them powerlifters? No. Am I trying to get them stronger for their sport? Yes. So how do you do that? What's the best strength sport out there? Powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting. So he revolutionized powerlifting with his training system. And so now, does my training system look like a West Side or conjugate? No, but there's bits and pieces that are sprinkled throughout. And yeah, I think he's done a lot for the field, not just of powerlifting, but for strength and conditioning.
No, I
I think a
agree.
lot of people, a lot of young strength coaches don't realize how much he has influenced the field.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I agree with that one. So, hey, when you're not training, you're not in the weight room, you're not doing one of the other tasks that you got on the administrative side too. Like you're away from VCU for a little bit. What are some
Yep.
of your hobbies that kind of keep you recharged and keep you passionate to go back to work the next day?
I'll tell you this, and this is a word to the wise for young strength coaches. Get yourself a hobby that you enjoy doing and do it regularly because I didn't do shit for 20 years. Realistically, it was, I would take the compulsory 1 week of vacation with the family here or there, but I literally ate, slept, and breathed strength conditioning. My assistant walked in my office the other day and she goes, "Have you read all these books?" And I said, "Yeah." And she's like, "Really?" And I was like, "What do you read?" Because like that it was everything. So now fast forward, I've gone through my career and I've been remarried, and my new wife sat down with me and we started talking about later on in life what we want to do, and we were discussing what I did as a child, and it was going outside, being outside, and she was like, "You're listing off all these things that you don't do." So I have come back around to that. I'm doing a lot of hiking now. My wife and I bought an RV um, 2.5, 3 years ago. So every chance we get, we'll take it out on the road. Last 2 springs ago, we had a volleyball tournament in Charlottesville, and so my wife and I drove the RV up there, and we stayed on a llama farm. I got up and coached the girls up, warmed them up for the match, and then we camped that night. So trying to find ways. My wife refers to it as stealing time. Like she'll stop by and have lunch with me at work, and so I now have a dog, which the listeners or viewers probably heard her scratching at the door here. Um, uh, 2-year-old pit bull. I spend every waking moment with her, and if I could bring her to work with me, I would. There she is there. uh, and just being outside. And my wife and I bought a house a year ago, and we call it the farm. So we got an acre of property, so there's a lot to do out here. So doing that.
No, that's awesome. I like that too, stealing time and finding those pockets. Like that's a huge thing for coaches to do. And I know I fell victim to that as well. Early in my career, not being able to like keep up with some of those hobbies and things I like because you felt like, hey, I got to spend every waking moment in the office or coaching or getting up to speed and reading every single book because if I don't do that, like I'm never going to make it.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's work for the next day. I mean, that's
Yeah. And
good enough for government's work.
yeah, don't police your desk.
Exactly.
So I'm not babysitting your desk. And I try to be pretty straightforward with my staff and say, look, if you're not here or if you don't have responsibilities, as long as you're getting your work done, I'm not going to expect you to be here monitoring your desk.
No, I love that. It's a
It's
great philosophy
yeah,
and that's great for a head coach and like a supervisor to have that mentality because you've experienced it and like good, bad, indifferent, whatever's happened from it, like you can make sure that the coaches underneath you, even if they don't like want to listen to you, you can explain the importance and they can choose whether or not they want to follow that. But I mean,
mm,
sometimes you got to kick them out. Just go
yeah,
home.
yeah, exactly.
Hey, so if you weren't coaching, like in the strength and conditioning profession, what do you think you might be doing as a profession or like maybe long term, like what might be next for Coach Kontos?
I've said it pretty frequently as of late that if I had to go back and do it again, I'd be a firefighter. Um, I think all the service industry professions are honorable professions to be in, but also it's that camaraderie that they have in the department. And I can speak a little bit to this because my wife is a fire marshal for the city of Richmond, and she sees that going on. Someone doesn't come into their shift, they go to their house, and it's I about 6 months ago, we had a dog prior to this one, and she was hit and killed. And my volleyball coach came to my house after I buried her. And I was like, that's so having that camaraderie is having those people have your backs. That plus being able to retire after 25 years, that's what I'm most envious of.
No, that would be a great thing, but it's awesome to kind of see like you understand that and like have that in many aspects too, though, like in your current job. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, firefighter, maybe volunteer firefighter moving forward.
Yeah, I looked into it, and that's when I really started exploring on my back issues, and I was like, yeah, that's not advisable.
Yeah, that's all right. You
Yeah,
keep coaching, that's for sure.
exactly. Yeah.
All right, so it might have shifted nowadays, but like I'm sure like you still got the bug in you. Setting up an ideal training day for yourself. Like what's your favorite music playing like over the speakers? And then what's that best post-training meal after that heavy lift look like?
It's going to be something hard and heavy on the radio, whether did a lot of metal back in the day, Pantera, um, Sepultura, Soulfly, things like that. But these days, there's more gangster rap is coming on. As long as it's hard and heavy. So, back in the day when everything was healthy and the heart issues weren't an issue, it's a handful of ephedrine and caffeine pre-workout, along with some quick digesting carbs and maybe some protein in there, and then afterwards, it have to be a squat or a deadlift day, and then afterwards, I'd like to get the liquid nutrition in, some chocolate milk and protein, and then steak and rice later on, 2 hours later.
All right. Not too bad. Not too bad.
Pretty
You led with
straightforward.
ephedrine and caffeine, and I was
Yeah.
like, post-workout? That's insane.
No, yeah, that's pre-workout, and I found out years like after years of this, like that doesn't really help with your sleep. Even
Mm.
if you're taking ephedrine and caffeine at 7 in the morning, with the amount that you're taking still affects you.
All right, just to clarify, steak and rice is after,
You
not
got yes,
ephedrine and
no, not
caffeine.
ephedrine and caffeine beforehand. No. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, well, coach, last one I got for you, like dig back into it or whatever first one comes to mind, but what is maybe your favorite either under the bar memory or favorite coaching memory that you've had thus far in your career?
So I'll say as an athlete, in 2015, I squatted 600 um, in competition in IPA powerlifting federation. So in just knee wraps. So it was I had officially retired from powerlifting because I had 2 heart attacks in 2008. 5 years later, my training was going well. I had had no cardiac issues, got the okay from my cardiologist to train to do a meet. I found a meet that was pretty local, and I kind of did it. I trained for it, but not didn't put a ton of pressure. And I went 9 for 9. I had the heaviest squat of the day. That put me top three of my age and weight class in the country at that time. So that was pretty cool. But I would have to say, from a coaching standpoint, it's not any one moment, but it was the buildup of working with baseball. I think it was 2012 or 13. Our baseball coach was diagnosed with cancer and died, and our assistant coach was put in the position of interim head coach, and then the head coach position. So 2014, we didn't make it into the A10 tournament. 2015, no, I'm sorry, 13, we didn't make it into the tournament. 2014, we made it in, but lost in extra innings the next year. And a lot of the time throughout this, our weight room culture took a dramatic shift. We had, prior to the coach passing away, we'd gotten assistant coach, and he was like, "Look, what's what gives here? Like, I see you coaching. but we're not doing this, we're not doing that. I said, we don't have the consistency. And he went to the head coach, we got the consistency, and it just built from there. And so that became a big identity for the team. So 2015, we went to A10 championships, went to a regional, won that, and went to the super regional for the first time in school history. But in and around that time, we had our first 600-pound squat on the baseball team. Another guy squatted 585. We had made tremendous gains. So being part of that process and seeing it go from really fucking dejected and this sucks to the top, those are some of the best moments. You know, there's a song and I'm not going to do it justice. I won't even try. But when it comes on now, I'm like, oh yeah, I love that. I love this song because it's what the guys played after every win, and so we heard it a lot that year. So it's really cool, really special to be part of that process.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, it's unfortunate that that's kind of maybe the catalyst or like one of the turning points of like what it like with the coach passing away that like kind of started it. It's just, I guess that's the lowest point until like it was able to
Yeah,
build up until like that championship run and getting to super regionals. But that's one thing like on the outside that a lot of people don't see. And like even color commentators or any amount of research that people are going to do leading up into a big game they're never going to fully understand the process. And like you're talking about 4 years worth of work from
yeah,
that point in time up until that championship and like that run that you guys had, that it's impressive on its own. But when you look at everything that happened and being a part of it for that many years, like leading up to it, it makes it even that much more impressive. And like you're that much more bought into it and excited, and you kind of treasure that memory because of all the work that those guys put in and all the momentum and like build up that there was leading up to just a culmination of a day, basically.
yeah, yeah. It's you when you go through people with like that, whether it's the staff or most of the players, by the time we got to the A10 championships in 15, most of those guys who had knew the former coach, they moved on, but a lot of us we went through something very significant and had a very big bond because of that.
Yeah, no doubt at all. Like that culture, that camaraderie, like companionship, and like obviously like going through some of those really difficult times and being able to stick together throughout it, that's huge. And I mean, sports transcend the life, and that's a huge example of it right there. And the weight room
Yeah.
is a catalyst for all those things, I think. So that's awesome to kind of hear that story. But no, coach, like I appreciate you coming on today. I know this has been in the works for a while, so I'm really appreciative we were able to get this done. For anybody that's got any follow-up questions for you, kind of want to network and maybe pick your brain a little bit about kind of your experience, your role, kind of see what else you got going on this year. Where can they kind of follow you?
So Instagram, Kontos Strength. That's my handle. And then they can email me at tacontos@vcu.edu. Any questions, whatever, feel free. If it takes me a while to get back, Nick can attest that I will get back to you, but it'll take me a little while. And with that, I want to say, first of all, thank you for your service, Nick.
I appreciate it. Thank
I
you.
hope your listeners or viewers realize that you're a serviceman, and so thank you for that. But then thank you for having me on here and chasing me down to be able to get this done. I really appreciate it, and then working with me. You're one of the best in the biz, so I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for your support, and like it was worth the wait. So I'm glad we got to do this. I know we'll have to run it back sometime, and I wish you all the best, like leading up into now your 27th year, and we'll see where this takes you. But I can't thank you enough for coming on today, Coach. It's been a blast talking to you.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com. where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.